And welcome back, everybody, for the Reuben Rose Competition Award event. This competition has a long history. It was established to commemorate the memory of one of our founders, Reuben Rose, when he passed away in 1989. And tonight we are celebrating the winners of the 31st annual competition. Once again, since the meeting is virtual, the certificates and prizes have been sent in advance, but since not all of our members, since not all of our winners are members who know what a certificate looks like, or at least not all of their guests and family do, I am going to screen share just one example of what the certificate looks like. Okay, I chose a certificate by a winner or of an honorable mention who is not himself a member, because I thought that that would be the most appropriate, since our members usually do know what the certificates look like. Okay, so I would like to thank, first of all, this year's judges: Miriam Weber of Israel, last year's Reuben Rose second prize winner; David Silverman of Illinois, one of last year's honorable mention winners; and especially our international judge, who is with us tonight, Kay Richards of the University of California, Berkeley, who's a poetry critic and translator, and of course a poet in her own right. Okay, and they are joining us. I hope David is with us. He wasn't sure he could make it, but if so, then they are joining us from 3 different time zones. Okay,
I'm here.
Oh, you're here, great. Hello, David. Judging a competition that received several entries is a lot of hard work, and we're so grateful to them for finding the time and the energy to be our judges. So let's all show our appreciation to the judges by giving them a hand clap. Thank you. And then a special thanks, as usual, to Mark Levinson, the long-term administrator of the competition. I'm constantly awed by Mark's experience and expertise. The smooth running of the competition and its success is in large measure due to him. So again, everyone, a round of applause for Mark. And I would now like to invite Mark, who I'm sure has some comments to share with us. Mark, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thanks, Judy. I'd like to join you in thanking the judges and thanking all who entered. I know that some entered in a spirit of artistic ambition and some entered in a spirit of philanthropy, the way that you buy your ticket to the government lottery, and we appreciate that too. We had a total of 337 poems by close to 100 poets. Unfortunately, we didn't have teachers telling whole classes to send their poetry to us the way Barsagi did. I wish we did have some. We got most of our entries from Israel. In Israel, we're known after all, and somebody who reads about the competition isn't going to say, oh, I don't know if this is on the up and up or not, but we do have people who were willing to send from overseas. We had about, close to half of the entries are from Israel. 39% were from the United States. We had only a few from England. We still haven't cracked England the way Barsagi has, which is a shame because we do tend to get winners from England. We had 4 entries from England. We had 2 from Australia, but there was a British winner and there was an Australian winner. We also got a couple from Canada, one from Ireland, and some that were quite miscellaneous. Now, the proportion was about 60-40 women to men, which reflected itself more or less in the winners. And it was overall, in terms of numbers, it was a good year. I don't know if that has to do with the coronavirus keeping people at home or not. I hope it doesn't. I hope we'll just continue to get more and more entries all the time. It makes me happy. It may not make the judges happy who have to read all those poems, but the judges didn't complain. On the contrary, they were polite enough to say that they liked the poems. Now, a word about Reuben. Reuben Rose, as Judy said, was one of the 4 founders of Voices Israel. And since this is the 31st memorial competition, you can imagine how long ago it was, because he didn't found the organization and dropped dead the next day. He started it way back in the early 1970s. And he did virtually all the work. And I ask you to step with me into the time machine and realize that that doesn't mean that he pounded the computer half the day. It means that he opened envelopes and typed on a manual typewriter and put what he typed back into the envelopes and went to the post office and sent them off. And it's an amount of effort that it's hard to imagine anybody putting in today. But he did it all himself, and he set an example for the running of the meetings of poets in Haifa, in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv. He traveled to the meetings in all the major cities. And as the chairman currently of the Tel Aviv group, I always say that whatever I do right in chairing a meeting is because I'm imitating Reuben, and whatever I do wrong is because I departed from his example. I can't say the same about the contest because, of course, Reuben Rose didn't know about the Reuben Rose Memorial Poetry Contest. It was set up by, I think, John Michael Simon was the first administrator, then briefly Birgit Talmon. And there, again, I'm following their example, but I'm always trying to take new suggestions for how to even the playing field. And let me give you a few examples of that. For example, people send in poems in fonts that they think are nice and poetic. I reduce all the poems to a single font before they go to the judges. One of the judges remarked to me once that when I send in batches of poems, the successive poems by the same poet are obvious. And if you read 3 poems and they look more or less the same, you say, these are by the same person. The 4th poem is probably going to be about the same too. So I homogenize the poems. When the poems go to the judges, no 2 adjacent poems are by the same poet. This doesn't mean that if you write 3 poems about your Aunt Bertha from Bronx, they're not going to be identifiable, but we do what we can. We have new judges every year, so that the poet who feels that maybe he just didn't happen to catch the particular taste of the particular judges always has another chance. And there's one more thing, and I see that it's a difference between us and the Bar-Sagi Prize, which is that nobody gets 2 honorable mentions. Nobody gets a win and an honorable mention. Once you've got more than 1 good poem, we just take the best one and we give other people a chance for all the other prizes. One thing that we have yet to deal with is the Ricky Friesen problem, which is that you can win the first prize twice. If Ricky wins another 2 or 3 times, we're going to seriously have to consider what to do about serial winners. So I can only end by encouraging everybody to help us solve the problem by sending in your very best work next year.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Kay Richards, our international judge, who to our delight is with us now, to say a few words. Kay? Kay, are you with us? She was still with us. She was with us the last time I looked. Perhaps you need to unmute yourself, Kay.
Here we go.
There.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I unmuted the microphone.
Yeah.
So Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me on the team of judges. And I have to congratulate all the winners, first of all, for their wonderful poems. And the next is the Reuben Rose administration. I think it was a tremendous undertaking with more than 300 poems, submissions, and 100 poets. That's not a small contest, I would say. So obviously, English having become a sort of a global language in many continents and so on, that it will continue to have more participation, as I can see, that becomes more known and publicized and in various ways. So I want to congratulate the Voices Israel and the administration of the Reuben Rose contest. And now, having read the close to 350 poems, to read poems in such volume, I have to admit, you can't really sit in one sitting and read 10 poems. That's too taxing, because the poems are generally very compressed. And so your mental capacity for reading poems is not that great, I must say, in terms of volume. And so it took a long time and persistence to go through all of the poems. And I have to say, it is also quite a job to evaluate them. And they were supposed to be scored with a number 1 to 10. And it is so hard for each poem being very different that you give a point, but and his score. I'm used to giving points for A to D or F. So I basically figured out 5 categories of poems, and as the bottom being almost not comprehensible. It's mostly language problem. Some of them really, English wasn't a very proficient language to be writing. And the next level was bit by bit, it grew to the level of 8 and 9, which I considered A minus or A, straight A, or 10 would be A plus. Now, out of 350 poems, I gave about 25 to 30 full A pluses. So you can see it was quite a bit of filtering process to go through. And amazingly enough, I didn't know Miriam, I didn't know David. However, we apparently converged with our appreciation, so that in the end, there were no real discussions or disagreements or anything to come up with a fairly smooth result, which I consider a real wonderful thing for the judges. I thank you both for that. And I also admit that Miriam Weber wrote in the peak of our judging, wrote a poem called, what did you write? Judging Poems, which was very helpful to me because it made me think of what you were thinking, what other judges were thinking, and it inspired me to come up with or to formulate what my idea was by just reading them. So thank you all. This was a wonderful experience for me. And some of the winners and honorable mentions are all A pluses in my mind. And so congratulations to all of you and whoever participated in this contest. I also encourage and congratulate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kay. That was really edifying to hear that. And now you mentioned Miriam Weber, and I understand she has a few comments of her own to add in an especially appropriate format, right, Miriam? Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
As I said the other day, anybody who can't hear me, raise your hand. Okay. I told Judy that I would like to write something to say, and I wrote something, a little speech, but when I looked at my little speech, it seemed flat and dead. And the muse tapped me on the shoulder and said, change it into a poem.
This is always happening with Miriam, by the way.
It's always happening. They're very disturbing sometimes when I'm busy with something and the muse comes along and taps me on the shoulder. Anyway, I did it. So it's called Judging for the Reuben Rose Poetry Competition 2020. Judging poems is an art requiring some criteria in order to determine which are good and which inferior. Since I was not experienced in this specific sphere, I made a list of guidelines to which I could adhere. The number and variety of submissions was so vast, I wondered as I read the first if I would reach the last. Free verse is now in fashion. Almost all were in this form, but some had rhyme and meter, deviating from the norm. I'm told that rhyme and meter are returning to the field, coming out of hibernation with their rhythmic charm revealed. The Voices members have become a multiplying breed of poets with an inner urge to write, express a need, to set down their opinions, thoughts, their message to mankind, relate a story, resurrect a memory left behind. It is a form of therapy, releasing from the brain a store of life's experiences, living them again. The judging wasn't easy, faced with such a varied range of styles, forms, and language. Some were beautiful, some strange. To grade them, I spent many hours trying to do my best, evaluating qualities each of these poems possessed. The final scores, worked out by Mark and his devoted team, produced a list of 13 names. The rest will have to dream and have another go next time. The fates may then see fit to grant them all a better chance when they again submit. Congratulations to the winners, to those happy few on having reached the winning post. I've had that feeling too. So very few can reach this point, so many left behind. I urge you not to be disheartened, though it seems unkind. Next year you might have better luck and get a higher score. Life is full of challenges. This is just one more.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you. That was lovely. And our last judge is David Silverman. And I'm not sure, David, did you want to say a few words also?
Sure. I started writing poetry in high school thinking that it was going to get me girls. It never worked once. And back then in particular, I wrote to impress Malka Rubinowitz, this goddess who sat in front of me in Mr. Broderick's American history class. And while poor Broderick droned on about the Civil War and something I can't really recall about Abraham Lincoln getting shot, I would write love poems to Malka, and those poems thankfully have not survived the decades, but I remember one that I wrote with the mortifying title, Unanswered Desire. And I remember that in it, I compared her eyes to twin almonds, and just what every teenage girl wants to hear, and that I ached for her touch. And it's just horrible writing, I know, but in my defense, I had no discernible poetry writing skills at the time, and I was drowning in a tsunami of hormones. And at 15, I was a terrible poet, but an expert in unrequited love. And when I read the poem to her, instead of rushing into my arms and proclaiming she loved me too, she laughed, this kind of nervous, tentative laugh, as if she couldn't decide whether to feel sorry for me or that she needed to obtain a restraining order. And it never occurred to me that she judged me so harshly. And
David?
And worse, this is in parentheses, she lives 3 blocks from me right now. And she and my wife are very close friends. I tell this story because when I was asked to be a judge of the Reuben Rose competition, I thought of that experience, and I felt its weight. I know that we all come to our poetry writing for different reasons, and we bring with us different backgrounds, different ideologies, different capabilities. And, but what we all have in common is that we've chosen to share a part of ourselves through this ancient and still vital form of communication that at its best strips away all the layers of pretense and pushes aside the noise, and it shines a light on some aspect of existence that belongs uniquely to us, each one of us. And with that as a background, I can really say it was a privilege and an honor to read every one of the 337 poems that was submitted. And it was also, because of this year, it was a joyful exercise too, which I greatly appreciated, given how hard it's been to find joy during this, this terrible, terrible period. And I want to congratulate the 13 prize winners, of course. Some of the winning poems were so good, I was jealous that I didn't write them. And that's probably the highest praise I can offer. And as I think Kay said, it's really a shame there weren't another 20 prizes to give out, because I also had, I think there were 13 total prizes. I had more than 13 10s. We graded them on a score of 1 to 10. I had at least 25 10s. It was really quite extraordinary to read this. This large group of poems, and they were all mixed up, as Mark said, and so you never know when you were going to get something that really just like made you stop and feel completely jealous that it wasn't your work. But I also want to, in the next breath, I want to congratulate every other poet who didn't win a prize. And I won't say anything as cheesy as you're all winners just for participating, but it is true that I feel like a winner for having read everyone's work. So thank you to all the poets. And then just also, he doesn't need it. He's been doing it for a long time, and I don't want to embarrass him, but whatever work I put into this, Mark did 10 times more work. And I know we gave him a round of applause already. And, you really should understand that being on the inside of this now, I don't even think I know the extent of how many hours and how much work he put into that. So really it's praiseworthy, and I appreciated it because I got the benefit of his hard work. So anyways, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. That was great. And we all agree with you about how much we owe to Mark, and thank you to all of the judges. And now we come to the actual reading of the winning poems and honorable mentions. All of our prize winners and most of our honorable mention poets were able to be here, and I had an enthusiastic response to my request for proxy readers for the 3 who couldn't make it, and thank you to you all. So I'd now like to invite Ricky Freesom, this year's first prize winner, to read her poem, and I am just about again to screen share the poems. So Ricky, would you please read David's Shield, the first prize winner?
Yes, so just allow me first to say my profound thanks to Voices and to the judges, and I'm really humbled. I didn't mean to win twice. And this was a poem that came to me very quickly. Anybody who writes knows that sometimes you have the seed of an idea and you struggle to express it. This one came to me standing at the kitchen counter. I submitted it, really not expecting to win, so I'm doubly, triply gratified. Thank you. David Shield. I overheard a woman in the next aisle ask the clerk for a greeting card for someone about to be drafted. My grandson's going into the army on Sunday, into the Golani Brigade, she was saying. I heard the bravado in her voice, but I also detected the quiver, and I knew what she really wanted was a mantra, a prayer, an amulet, some guarantee of safety, a shield to protect her grandson, not a cheery good luck message on colored paper. I didn't dare look up to see the woman's face, yet I felt I already knew her, knew so many like her, knew myself. And besides, if we were to meet face to face, she'd see my tears, and that she didn't need.
Thank you, Ricky. Lovely poem.
I think it struck a responsive chord for many people. I think we all.
As Amiel said, you do better with a poem that expresses your own emotion than you do with a poem on a general theme. Okay, and now I would like to invite Jane Seitel, the second prize winner, to read her extraordinary poem, Lanternfish. Jane?
I just want to thank everyone again, Mark, for the remarkable work you've put into this, and the judges for being here today and for all the hours, all the care you've put into this process. I do appreciate and bow to you on that. And then finally, I want to thank all of the mentors in my life who have encouraged my poetry and taught me well. The name of this poem is Lanternfish, and it has an epigraph. Have you entered into the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? And that's from the book of Job. Lanternfish. Beyond our shallow trawling, a mother orca hauls the corpse of her newborn calf. She drags him week after week. Sharks circle their daggers ready as a pod moans their songs. Above, red giants slowly die in the wild dust of nebulas. Miles below the whales, arthropods older than Adam lie undetected near black smokers of soot, sulfur, and iron. Suddenly, a vitreous shrimp veers too close to an altar stone, gets seared by a spewing vent. A lanternfish navigates swirls of marine snow. A sentinel, he lights glowing mounds in the flow and ebb of magma. Here, in a realm ardent with matter, skeletons heap the salt mountains in a relentless reservoir born of hydrogen in heavy water. Here lives a world beyond reckoning, furtive as the far moon's face. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. Lovely poem. Our third prize winner is Esther Lipton, also a member from the UK, with her poem, The Burden of Memory. Esther, would you read it for us, please?
The Burden of Memory. I write this poem for you, my friend, a friend of 50 years or more, whose life was spent carrying a rucksack of rocks, invisible and hidden upon your bent back, that heavy, sad burden of guiltless remorse, victim of a callous, cruel rape that memory cannot cast aside.
No.
But surfaces for air to breathe and crushes into your thoughts unannounced, disturbing your life as a teenager, young woman, wife, mother, and now grandmother. A jack-in-the-box, hiding in the recesses of your heart, the psyche jolted by a sight, a sound, a smell, a cry, a kiss, and the vision reappeared, faithful, but fated to hinder your happiness. Yet you've lived your life without bitterness, by giving, giving, giving of yourself, denying your right to be a person, negating your very existence. Do not consider me. I am worthless, you say. The needs, real or imagined, of your family, friends, community, the underdog, anyone is greater than mine, so I must help. The anger, rejection, and shame replaced by kindness, compassion, and love for others. Now that I have heard your story, the time has come for me, your loyal friend, to unload those rocks from your broken back and replace the rucksack with angel wings.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you. That is a remarkable poem. Very, very heartfelt.
Mm.
We now come to the honorable mentions, and these are listed in alphabetical order of the poem's title. Incidentally, anybody who wants to have the full text of these poems or of the Bar Sagi poems can download them from our website, voicesisrael.com. And both of them, the winners and honorable mentions of both competitions are printed in the Voices annual anthology as a separate section. And that usually it comes out around July, August, September. Okay. So now I'm going to invite actually, these are not in the order that I imagined them, because I have here or alphabetical order of the poem's title, but the first one should be Anne with acceptance speech, but you know what, let's just do it in the order in which the poems appear in this text, because it's going to be much easier than trying to find them all. So I'm going to invite Haya Onale to read her poem Blind. Haya? Okay, Haya actually was unable to come, so Fela Hershon will read her poem. Fela, you're here?
Yes.
Great. Could you read Haya's poem, please?
Right. Blind. Mother always said he was troublesome even before birth. When he was just a fetus, he grabbed her umbilical cord and tangled it in 1,000 knots. A true scout he was. He would hurt mother until a point of agony, and then he would let her be. Mother would love him again. She would become happy. He always knew how to control her like that. He always knew how to push her buttons all at once, then release before her wind became his storm. The baby became a child who left the milk carton out on hot summer's days. But that's just what children do. They color outside the lines and watch you admire their piece of art. They become demons. But a demon's son will always be angelic. That's what mother always said. The child became a teenager who stole a car and drove it without a license. But that's just what teenagers do. They make mistakes and expect you to correct them. They become criminals. But a criminal's son will always be innocent. That is what mother always said. The teenager became a man who replaced milk with alcohol. But that's just what men do. They replace innocence with addictions and crimes with more crimes. They became drunks. But a drunk son will always be sober. That is what mother always said. The man became a body mother found with a bottle in its hand. But that's just what bodies do. They assume the fetal position and die in their creator's womb. They become cold. But a son's cold body will always be warm, mother said. This time, a little less sure.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you. A lot to think about in that poem. We move on to an honourable mention from a member of ours in Australia, but unfortunately in Australia it's around 3 or 4 in the morning right now, and he decided it would be cruel and unusual punishment to require him to be here. I'm going to invite John Dendy from the US, who, although not a member, has generously offered to proxy read Emmanuel's poem. John? You are here, John? I hope he's here because he also has a poem of his own to read later. Perhaps you need to unmute yourself, John. Let me stop sharing for a minute and see if I can see him because he was here before.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, fine.
All
So
right,
I will
I'm
go
sorry.
back to
Sorry about that.
screen sharing.
All right.
Okay. It's all yours, John.
Now that you're here, the quiet and stillness of late afternoon autumn sun on the plant on the table in Sydney is not so very different from the quiet and stillness of late afternoon autumn sun on the table in Johannesburg, and are both much the same as the quiet and stillness of late afternoon autumn sun in Jerusalem. Because the quiet and stillness are not in Sydney or Johannesburg or Jerusalem, but in you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. That's a simple, beautiful poem. Thank you for that lovely reading of it. And we now come to Sarah Sassoon from Israel and her poem, The Colored Jew. Sarah, are you with us?
Yeah, I am here. Sorry, I just had to unmute. Hi.
You did it with commendable swiftness.
The Colored Jew. My skin is the color of olive tree roots spanning continents, ingenerated thousands of years under the Middle Eastern sun. My foremothers were dhimmis, harbored in black hijabs, the color of wailing. My grandmother says, I am not allowed to wear. She's my Baghdadi grandmother, replanted near Haifa by the sea, behind a guarded fence where she learned to scrub immigrant tent mud off her family. She wore dresses, the color of singing flowers, lavender, allium, blue woodruff, Persian iris, the wild pink, and her favorite, red roses. Today I picked a dandelion and blew its silvery seeds far, countless over wild grass, never to forget my grandmother's 11th commandment, be happy.
Thank you, Sarah. Lovely poem. Thank you. And now we come to a non-member from the US, or rather right now from Germany via the US, Mervyn Sivewright. Mervyn, I hope that's how you pronounce it.
You're right. It's okay.
Lovely to have you with us, Mervyn. So please, would you read your poem?
Yes, it's an honor to be here. And just to give context to where I was emotionally, this was after the earthquake tsunami in 2011 in Japan. And this place was like a refuge to get away from the work that we had to get the country back going again after it went through that. So, walks along Arasi Gorge. I miss walking in Japan's Tawada Valley, distance in kilometers, the line of a sonnet. At spring, I would drift through raining pink cherry blossom flakes, pausing, smelling birthed life released from winter's grasp. The summer brings green prism hues to the Rossi Gorge where rivers converge, snakes intertwining, water carving its path while feeding moss partners with each stone. Centuries of forest growth find careful steps of onlookers, and me counting waterfalls with mist drips or thundering white rapids. Sounds harsh enough for closed eye meditation. Opening my eyes at autumn, sunset leaf tints find the brushes of painters quietly at the river's edge. I find my pen to create a picture of words.
Thank you, Mervyn, and you did a beautiful job of creating a picture of words there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we are come back to our own Susan Olsberg of Israel and her poem, Gates. Susan. Surely I don't need to ask you to unmute.
I've just unmuted. I've just unmuted.
Great. Fine.
Thank you, Judy. Gates. Is a gate to open or close? Viewed this way, our whole lives are an opening till the gate closes. Shall we open the catch, undo the latch, enter and explore, or pull the gate shut, closing it like a door? Do we guard, protect what lies beyond, or secure any likelihood of escape? Descriptions of a gate abound. Throughout history, symbolic gates have marked the passage of time, from the simple 5-barred garden gate, inheritor of Eden's gate sublime, to temple gates and palace gates, significant markers of boundaries, or more homely, childhood prohibition, not to go beyond the garden gate, to wondrous Golden Gate bridges linking land masses in more modern times. A school gate demarcated a boundary line, and trellised romantic gates in lovers' lanes, roses and hearts entwined. The heavenly gates await the end of time, and in between, from birth to lifetime's end, gates are entered, gates are closed, gates are forced or left ajar, wood, metal, stone, real and ethereal, remote controlled, security patrolled, closed with a clang or a click, opened in excitement or with a fearful flick. Be careful to use the right trick to navigate all the gates a lifetime offers, the ones we choose and the ones we cannot pick.
Thank you, Susan. Again, a lovely, very thoughtful poem. And now we go all the way to Texas in the United States for our member Anne McCready and acceptance speech. Anne? I guess we are waiting for Anne to unmute.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here. And as someone who just finished coordinating a student poetry contest about this size, I am forever grateful for all the work that has gone into it. And so this poem, Acceptance Speech. In appreciation, I want to acknowledge those who have made me who I am today. Parents who saved me from myself and my constant asthma. Teachers who allowed me the freedom to write troubled poems. Soldiers who have died fighting and those who lived to answer the question of war. The abuela lugging groceries who accepted a ride and paid me with stories. Politicians in blue jeans whose platform is loud and clear. The 10-year-old who told me God was black, a notion I still consider. Patient parents in crowded grocery store aisles with their tired children. Friends who knew when to push and when to pull. And boyfriends who believed I was beautiful, especially the one I married.
Thank you. Very lovely poem again. Thank you, Anne. So now we come to Iris Dan, who has the distinction, or rather I have the distinction of being from the same city as her, Haifa. Only Iris wins a lot more competitions and honorable mentions than I do. So Iris, could you please read pictures from an exhibition? And unmute yourself, of course.
Pictures from an exhibition, Israel Museum, Jerusalem. In the center sits the Pharaoh who ruled this land from afar 3.5 millennia ago. What was he doing in this sorry hole? A reporter asked on TV, and the historian pointed out that the place was of high strategic importance, for a time at least. As his eyes are simultaneously directed inwards, upwards, and laterally, Pharaoh's field of vision does not include us. He converses with entirely different spheres. Nor does it include the prisoners from conquered cities represented on extremely expressive, vividly colored cartouches, kneeling down, ankles and wrists tied at their back, looking into the dust as befits the vanquished. We are duly awed, duly saddened. We console ourselves with the fact that our tribal name, Israel, is there on a list of infamously crushed vassal peoples. In our geopolitical situation, a historiographical mention of such import is worth more than any victory. A settler bends to inspect the inscription. We can see the gun tucked in his trousers between his talit katan and his bare skin. In the corner of the room, a young father bends to explain to his little boy the meaning of the stone objects around. What sculpture is able to render the tenderness that curves his knee, shortens his tendon, the intense, the worried, the loving seriousness of his still unlined face? In every museum where war is on display, where exquisite artifacts are framed by death and destruction, where the ceiling of history threatens to fall upon us, may there always be a parent attempting to make sense of it for his child, looking together with the child for the right answer to give to the Sphinx.
Thank you, Iris. A poem that bears a lot of thinking about. And now I'm going to call John Dendy back to read his own poem, Silent Night Revisited. And as a metrical poet myself, I especially liked this one and the fact that a metrical poem and a rhyming poem gained an honorable mention. John?
Thank you. This was written while on tour in Israel in 1992 with my wife for quite an extensive 2.5 weeks in that lovely country. And I wrote it on the tour bus, all of it.
Wow.
There is no silence in this place, this promised land, this holy land. No field where sheep may safely graze, nor shepherd may serenely gaze in peace and trust a fellow man. There is no peace upon this land. There never was, there never was. Old tribal fears of other clans, 100 struggling, striving bands with staff or star or moon or cross. There is no calm within the breasts of those whose lives are so entwined in eager, independent quests, a tangled danger, life distressed by fate, by choice, by place and time. Is there still time? Do wise men dare to prophesy a future when old Noah's creatures gladly share a life together without fear? Lamb and lion, man and man.
Thank you, John. A lovely poem, a really lovely poem. Our next honorable mention is by our long-term member, John Michael Simon, who could not be with us tonight. So Donna Bichar will read his poem for him. Donna?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Judy. Babushkas by John Michael Simon. I look at them queuing at the supermarket checkout, fidgeting at PTA meetings or at creative writing groups, handing out copies of their poems about their mothers, about their children. Babushkas all. Inside each one is a mother, and inside each mother, a child, pretty and smiling girly smiles in their differently colored frocks, reds, blues, oranges, and yellows, going back to old countries, Russia, Lithuania, Eastern Europe. So many stories hidden inside, variations on a theme of common femininity, weddings, births, divorces, and funerals, happiness and disappointment, all mixed up in their faces and petticoat memories. The smallest babushka is so tiny. I'll hide her away so she can stay protected and pretty, perhaps in a pumpkin shell, where she can dance all year round, especially on Halloween, to the music of the Nutcracker Suite.
Thank you, Donna. Lovely reading of John Michael's poem. And I think the last one is Amiel Schotz's The Mist. You may remember that Amiel was also one of the judges of the Bar Sagi Young Poets Prize. So Amiel, another not only metrical, but also a formal fixed form poem of Villanelle. So Amiel, would you please read The Mist?
The Mist of Villanelle for an 85-year-old, which I am.
Congratulations.
My portion am I helpless to resist. The evening cannot guarantee the dawn, as all my days recede into the mist. By untold blessings I am graced and kissed, though lines of loss and pain are surely drawn. My portion am I helpless to resist. I contemplate the lives I surely missed, the chances lost, the coming and the gone. as all my days recede into the mist. Must I at fate futilely shake my fist of cruel circumstance, the helpless pawn? My portion am I helpless to resist? Perhaps a wisp, a spirit shall persist, though void and precipice before me yawn, as all my days recede into the mist. So when I'm done, a trace may linger on for a brief span before oblivion. My portion am I helpless to resist, as all my days recede into the mist.
Thank you, Amiel. Thank you. Lovely poem again. I am now going to stop sharing because unless I am very much mistaken, that is the end of all the poems. And we have therefore finished now the reading of the poems, but please don't go away because it's becoming a Voices tradition to end our national events with an open mic reading. And we have a dozen or so members who have agreed to entertain us with a poem each. So I'm going to call on them in the order in which they signed up for the reading, and we're going to go straight into the open mic part of this evening, which will be short, but will take us a little over the 2 hours that people normally say is the most they can stand to Zoom for. However, I hope you'll all stay with us. And we're going to start with Reuben Goldfarb, who is going to read his poem, Persona Poems. Reuben?
Thank you very much, Judy. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Can everybody hear?
Good. Okay. So I see a signal that I'm being heard. Okay. So this is a poem about members of the Upper Galilee group, Voices Israel. And the background is my wife and I took a stroll one spring afternoon down to Blue Valley Park near the entrance of Tzfat, and there we encountered two friends who were also in the group. And while we were standing there and chatting, I wrote a little poem for each of them. And the first one is ascribed to Esther Rubinstein. A dazzling woman. My garments are begemmed. They sparkle plenty. Reflecting light, they distract you. I am hidden in their midst. Would you explore further or stay on the periphery? If so, stay your gaze. I am not for you. Here are two ascribed to Devorah Natkin. Minimalistic. I am a woman of few words, deep feelings, but few words. Do you understand what I say? Then I don't have to explain. My few words will suffice. And this is a second poem for Devorah. An imaginary cake. I've got an imaginary cake in my mind. The cake I would have baked had I gathered all my ingredients first. Then I would have remembered the ginger, cinnamon, and cloves, along with the shredded carrots and flour. My friends say it tastes fine. They're right, of course, but I can't help thinking of the cake that might have been. And this one is for my wife, Judith. It's called Waiting. I'm waiting for the kugel to coagulate. And this is the one I wrote during the Galilee Arts Festival. Amidah. All you can hear is the trilling of the cicadas. That's my offering.
Thank you very much, Reuben. And now David Silverman is next in line to read And God Created Hummus. David has a lovely sense of humor. I have a feeling we are about to see an example of it. David? Are you here?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I forgot I was muted. Yeah, I've read this poem publicly at least half a dozen times before American audiences, so I don't have to explain to this audience that the word is hummus, not hummus. So, so that's good. And the only other thing I'll say about it before getting into it is that there's a reference here to Al Gore and Natalie Portman that sounds like it's made up, and maybe I contrived it because it fit into the poem. I guarantee you it's something I found on the internet, so I know it's true. So, and God created hummus. In preparation for a talk I was to give in my synagogue on the first section of Genesis, the one in which God creates the world in 6 days, including Adam and Eve, and rests on the seventh, I printed out a scholarly essay entitled, "And God Created Humans." My printer, however, is very old, and with every exertion, wheezes like a coal miner might after 40 years in the mine, which seems like something I could say about myself climbing a staircase or running to catch a bus, though I can't remember the last time I took a bus, but I'm straying from the point, which is the ink did not transfer smoothly to the paper, and the resulting smear and shadow obscured some of the words, such that it appeared the title of the essay was no longer "And God Created Humans," rather it read, "And God Created Hummus." I stopped for a moment to consider what an article entitled "And God Created Hummus" might describe. On which day would God have created the hummus? It wouldn't be the first day, because even the most skillful hummus maker would need some light to find a bowl and utensils with which to grind the chickpeas. And of course, God hadn't yet created chickpeas. It also seems God wouldn't have bothered to create hummus on the days he created the animals and fish, because without opposable thumbs and submerged beneath the seas, these creatures could never hope to enjoy the pleasure of pushing a pita shovel through a plate of creamy hummus. No, God must have created hummus on the day he created humans. And it occurred to me, maybe the tree of knowledge wasn't an apple tree, but a chickpea tree. Though I know chickpeas don't grow on trees, perhaps in the Garden of Eden they did. The hardy beige globes hanging low and irresistible, waiting to be picked and soaked and mashed and stirred, then spread on a plate, a puddle of olive oil pooled in the center, warm and virginal, the most virginal oil ever pressed, and then some fat fava beans soaking like old Jews in a hot tub in Boca Raton. But unlike old Jews, fava beans are delicious. And yet again, my mind's meandered from the hummus creation story. So I typed the words "And God Created Hummus" into my browser. And after taking a quick peek at a site called Hummus XXX, which I immediately delete from my browser history, I'm directed to a website which gives the top 10 reasons to eat hummus, including because Natalie Portman and Al Gore are totally obsessed with hummus. This hardly seems a reason that I should eat hummus, but it turns out they are both vegans, just like Adam and Eve. And now I think of Nat and Al naked in Eden, sharing a plate of hummus and moaning with pleasure. Al is a sloppy eater. She will come to hate that about him in the hundreds of years ahead. But tonight, when a bit of hummus sticks to the side of his cheek, she kisses it away. And though God has created Natalie Portman from Al Gore's rib, and though they are to be fruitful and multiply, I am disgusted. He is old enough to be her father, for God's sake. But before I banish the image of the two hummus-obsessed lovers, my mind drifts to a scene in black and white. Both Nat and Al are dressed in trench coats and stylish hats, and Claude Rains ushers Victor Laszlo onto a plane out of Casablanca, a place you can probably find some fine hummus. And before they part, Natalie, with tears in her eyes, says, "But Al, what about us?" To which the former vice president and inventor of the internet replies, "We'll always have hummus. Here's looking at you, kid." And I know this is silly. And I know this is just my way of putting off writing the talk that everyone expects, in which I will present the same themes as 1,000 speakers before me. So I want nothing more than to stand in front of them and talk about hummus, not the dubious reasons they should eat hummus, but about that day in Jerusalem I took you to Pinata hummus for the first time. I want to tell them how the waiter glared at us when we asked for a menu. I want to tell them how the pita was so hot it burnt my fingers when I split it open. I want to tell them how the oil and beans slid down my throat like an elixir that ought to be bottled and sold at county fairs to cure what ails you. I want to tell them how beautiful the simplest things can be, how the world was created in 6 days, how much Adam loved Eve, and how much I loved you when, sloppy eater that I am, you moved next to me and kissed away a stray bit of hummus from my cheek.
I did warn you that he has a sense of humor, but I think one of the best jokes there was the one before the poem began, where he said, I found it on the internet, so I know it must be true. We move on to Miriam Weber. The two of you seem inextricably wedded today. First is Bath Sagi judges, and then one after the other for the open mic. Miriam, you were going to read There's Always Too Much on My Plate.
Yes. There's always too much on my plate. The threshold of the 80s crossed. My youth and middle age are lost. I'm tireder than I used to be. A noontime snooze obligatory. Things take much longer to get done. Where I did 5 jobs, now it's 1. The rest I'll have to decide to wait. There's always too much on my plate. Last week, my birthday came again. An idea sparked inside my brain. I won't go up to 84, where old age waits behind the door, but back to 76 instead. My family gave the go-ahead, endorsing it right down the line. So far it's working, I feel fine. I'm full of life now, in my prime. My 80th comes in 4 years' time. When people ask me to explain, how can you celebrate again? I tell them, though it was well done, that first time was a practice run. More energy, no need to snooze. Which job today? No need to choose. I do them all, no longer tired. With 8 years off, I feel inspired. No longer do I need to state there's always too much on my plate.
Thank you, Miriam. Great fun. Wendy Dickstein is next with Gazpacho. Unmute, Wendy.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. It's Gazpacho for Agnes. Because you're coming to dinner, I peel tomatoes, watch them step out of their skins, slip into sizzle of olive oil, chop cucumber, and remember the first time I made gazpacho. My son was 10, held up his spoon, grinned at the thick red liquid, said, Gestapo. How sad you were at 15, even though we'd fall down laughing, smoke half cigarettes, use our shoes for ashtrays. After school, your mother, twice widowed, greeted you with silence. Years later, you told me how the kids would snicker when you walked to town with your father, twisted from Treblinka. After he died, your mother sent you every afternoon for Hebrew lessons to an unsmiling, kerchiefed woman, while the rest of us sneaked out of school for rum bowls. Now, here you are at 60, quirky, vulnerable, as if you too step out of your skin. You bring me cake and photos, 14 grinning grandchildren. What roots you've plunged deep into earth, a leafy forest sprung from crooked branches. Come in, old friend, try my gazpacho.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, nice. And now we have another Wendy, Wendy Bloomfield, our publicity officer with Windy Day here and there.
Okay. This is part of a series that I've written over the years called Yearning, because when I'm there, I yearn for here. And when I'm here, I remember what it was like there. So this is called A Windy Day, Here and There. Summer light on the Sea of Galilee. Northern winds of afternoon stir waves, shrieks of naked children jumping into silky waters. Smooth rounded limbs, harsh stones beneath their feet, fragrance of herbs in lakeside brush, singing of palms in the hot summer wind. Winter light on Frensham Pond, harsh northern winds whip ripples into waves, shrieks of children in Wellington boots, puffed into padded coats, jumping into icy water, not heeding mother's cries, muddy puddles frosted from recent snow, fragrance of burning leaves in the forest.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to Ellie Ben Joseph, who is going to read his poem called Some Say. Ellie, I hope you're still with us.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Okay. I just read the poem without giving an introduction. Some say our spirits spiral life to life in shapes like ants, anteaters, or sapiens. Some say a rapture will herald final days, revealing all and cleansing us from sin. That everlasting arms will greet the select, that miracles can bridle natural law. Mom told me tales. Dad burdened me with myths like concrete slabs. True believers lay down dogma. Owls of science, talons dug in nature, feast on existential flesh. The unsure shrug their shoulders, shake their heads, while gurus bank on moonstruck followers. We barely see what lies beyond our walls. Our windows curtained dull the scenery. Although bright eyes may chance to catch a glimpse of brilliance, should some breeze part the drapes. Despite the data, observations glean, observatories glean. We fail still to put a finger on essence. I leave a door ajar to let some clue drop in, but have at hand a plain belief in heartfelt words, warm smiles, a pat on the back, the kindnesses that I can give and get.
Thank you, Ellie. Very, very thoughtful and philosophical. And now we're moving on to Yohanan Zakantov. Yohanan, are you here? And his poem is Cherry Blossom. Cherry Blossom Girl. Hi, Yohanan.
How you doing? This is a poem about my late wife. I'll be remembering her tomorrow. It's been 5 years since she passed. The sunshine rises as the dew glistens, your arms outstretched like slender branches. The wind sweeps gently, your scent inviting. Your hair softly flowing, my hand caresses. Your form is strong, but slenderly sways. My eyes are drawn to you unceasingly. I watch your reflection in the still water, as if I could reach out and touch you gently. Cherry Blossom Girl, you are my one and only. Hold me in my heart only. Cherry Blossom Girl, no one else catches my eye. Only you can hear me cry. Spring has read your blossoms complete, our hands entwined in gentle embrace. Pink petals float in the breeze of my soul, our feet rooted deeply with love and peace. The warmth of your soul with me receives, a love so strong that none can unlace. That's it.
Judy, can I just say, Judy, we don't hear you.
It took me about 4 clicks on the unmute button to unmute myself, which is why you couldn't hear me. And I am
May I
now-
just quickly say something, Judy?
Yeah.
Judy, it's Linda.
Yeah.
May I just quickly say something after Yochanan's reading?
Yeah, it's very
I
moving,
have
darling.
his two books that are for sale, I believe on Amazon, and he also has some here I sent for. And I can just, they're just amazing poems, and thank you, Yochanan. So I'm just saying how awesome it would be to have these books in your house.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to Anne McCready, who is going to read us Porcelain.
Thank you. Porcelain is from my book, Letting Myself In. Porcelain. After a spring of good news, gotten too late to make a difference, the full moon has waited for me to rise at midnight, hungry for hope, its lunar face a porcelain platter above the pine forest, a luminous bounty set on a mat of black space over the hayfield table of our inherited land, a plate so filling that I take it in, then wince to see it drop and crack behind the trees, just as splinters of sunlight thrown from the east are fused into day glow, repurposed light that builds and builds so that I can write this note to say that as the solstice turns the world towards weeks of summer heat, when our passions will flare, then wane into wanting, wanting, wanting that gives way to the wisdom of already having, we can know in darkness and in dawn, everything, yes, everything that is precious breaks and is remade.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was a lovely poem. Let's go on to Susan Somerville and Matzo Balls.
Hi. I was feeling a little guilty about being so glib with this poem. And so I just want to take a moment to think about what has occurred in Israel over the last few days. And it has been very heartrending to me. So I was a little concerned about the fact that I'd written this silly poem. It's silly. Okay, matzo balls. Jumping right out of a bowl of soup, sometimes Sephardic, sometimes amazingly Ashkenazic, sometimes absorbing the taste of the garlicky liquid, somehow providing a tonic for looking at life. Nana, my maternal grandmother's light fluffy floaters were voluminous clouds that shifted across a French blue heavenly expanse. Those tennis ball sized marvels were a kid's delight to swish and swallow, hardly realizing that they had slipped down my esophagus, a dreamy gastronomic experience. The next night, Nana fried them in big chunks of butter. They were greasier and tastier, but no one spoke of reduced fat in this or that, of healthy matters or of kashrut. Those balls enhanced chicken soup and were simply the way of cooking, the joy of cooking in assimilated San Francisco. Mommy, her dense, dark, meaty marrow balls sank in the soup and sank in your stomach. She always said that hers were the very best. And yes, they were zesty, never lacking in spice and spunk. I relished every bite. Those sinkers reminded me of hard little super balls that hit the floor with a thud, then bounced so high they knocked out the ceiling light and they caused a blackout. Sarala. A Kadusha Dicker friend makes old-fashioned kneedlock with egg whites whipped into peaks. The same kneedlock came by steamer across the ocean from Russia, Romania, Poland, and Hungary to the tenements of New York, Chicago, and Cincinnati. Shabbos Dika, soft Pesach Dika, and Rosh Hashanah Dika balls that are not savory, with great air bubbles that look like craters on a bland winter moon. They often get left decorating the flowered bowls on white lacy tablecloths. Oh, but they're levitational like Torah. Tsur and Ariel, professionals in the kitchen. They're always reading the back of the matzah meal package. Proverbial kneedlock with a universal quality and flavor. Never unique, but always reliable. Balls that are quintessential parve with dill cooked in a vegetarian soup. And of course, wrapped in some soggy spinach leaves. The kids are newlyweds, so I'm very tactful, and our relationship remains intact. Me. Better not think to boast, but my matzo balls are scrumptious. Delicately seasoned with nutmeg, salt, pepper, and parsley. Sometimes saffron lends color. Slightly dense and delicious, like Sephardic marrow balls. Elevatingly airy, like the Ashkenazic ones. They sit majestically in the chicken soup as queens on golden thrones. They're wonders of a cuisine for a king. But only if they do not fall apart while cooking. Nobody got it.
Judy, you have to unmute.
Yeah. There, now I've unmuted. For some reason, it takes a few clicks before it works. Thank you, Susan. Let's go on to Paul Rubinowitz and the Monastery.
Thank you, Voices Israel and Judy, for inviting me to read. I also want to thank Mark Levinson, the fearless leader of our Tel Aviv poetry group, which I am a new member of about 8 or 9 months. And the poem I'll read today is a poem I workshopped in the group, with the group, called The Monastery. This particular poem will also be in the journal, which I'm very proud of. I submitted and it was accepted. And it's also going to be made into a short poetry film with Sarah Pizzi, who's a wonderful choreographer and dancer, and that will be out in the fall. And if you want to see it or learn more about what I do, paulrubinowitz.com. And also my book, The Clay Urn, can be found at Halper's bookstore in Tel Aviv. I'm actually in the United States, but my buddy Yossi, I was in the army with in Israel, and he owns the bookstore, and he now has the books as well, and they're signed. So, The Monastery. Unable to finish my latest poem, I returned to the Buddhist monastery, the meditation garden in full bloom, lilac and mint. My teacher says to observe the natural order, draw her from memory, shadows and lines, symmetry, proportion. Or wrinkled face, explore the broken parts, draw a self-portrait through her eyes. Compare. Be ready to choose. Return and finish the poem, or stay. Observe autumn colors, mist after rain, death in winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Okay, we're running pretty late, but I hope we have time for at least one more. So I'm going to ask Sylvia Koffler to read She Sees Elvis Climb the Eiffel Tower.
Yes, this is still one of my favorite poems that I've written over the years. So, she sees Elvis climb the Eiffel Tower. The metal steps echo beneath her anxious feet as she climbs to view the city from its pinnacle. Years melt into wrought iron rafters as her thoughts shake the hands of those who lingered here. Hemingway, Stein, and those she'd known during her interval in the bright city. Here, she embraced the man from America, followed to his land. Red faded into gray. She forsook him, but not the land. Drawn by the neon lights of Las Vegas, drawn by the glamour of Hollywood movies, drawn by Viva Las Vegas, in which Elvis shakes his hips, surrounded by tall dancers in fluffy feather and sequin costumes. Now, she looks down from the pinnacle at people the height of leprechauns, waiting at the pylons, supporting the tall iron rafters. Doesn't dare linger long, briskly descends the steps where she sees Elvis climb, reach the top, slip and fall, blinded by the neon lights. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. Very nice. Okay, we do actually have another 3 people who have asked to read. So I think we'll continue for the next few minutes and finish the whole program the way we intended to. So I'm going to ask Susan Bell to read her poem, Olive.
Judy, I sent you a personal chat. I sent you a personal chat because I'll bow out because I think it really is very late.
Okay. So fine. Ricky, would you like to read yours, War Wishes?
I think I do. I think this is a good time to stop. And after that matzo ball poem, I'm so hungry.
Okay. Well, in that case, everybody, we'll call it a day or we'll call it an evening. It's been wonderful having you all with us. And I just want to remind everybody or tell everybody that we are planning 2 biggish events coming up. One, of course, is the Netanya 2-day residential workshop, which we hope to hold face-to-face at the end of May or the beginning of June, which unfortunately, I assume nobody is going to be able to travel from the UK and the US just to come to, so that will be more of a national Israeli thing. And the other is the 50th anniversary of Voices, and we are planning a Zoom celebration that everybody can log into in July, and you'll all get details of that when the time comes. And meanwhile, thank you to everybody, and I now officially declare
Judy, just before you do, may I just thank you on everybody's behalf for a splendid sharing. It's been a marathon session. It's no easy task to chair this type of Zoom meeting. The benefit is bringing the continents together, and we've all had a wonderful evening, but very indebted to you for all you've done. Thank you.